The late afternoon sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ashford Industries' corporate headquarters in downtown Seattle, casting long shadows across the marble lobby. 23-year-old Maya Chen stood just inside the revolving doors, her worn backpack slung over one shoulder, her faded jeans and university hoodie marking her as distinctly out of place among the tailored suits flowing past her. She'd received the cryptic letter 3 days ago, forwarded through her university mailbox. Your presence is required at Ashford Industries regarding matters of inheritance. Come alone. Tell no one. It was signed by someone named Gerald Pemberton, senior legal counsel. Maya approached the reception desk, where a woman with severely pulled back hair and diamond earrings that probably cost more than Maya's entire semester's tuition glanced up with barely concealed irritation. Delivery entrance is around back, the receptionist said without preamble, her eyes already returning to her computer screen. I'm not making a delivery. I have an appointment with Gerald Pemberton. The woman's perfectly penciled eyebrow arched. Mr. Pemberton doesn't take walk-ins. Especially not. She trailed off, but her meaning was clear as her gaze traveled from Maya's sneakers to her natural hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. I was summoned here. Maya pulled out the letter, but the receptionist waved it away dismissively. Look, sweetie, I don't know what game you're playing, but Mr. Pemberton is in an executive meeting. Perhaps you should, let me guess, a booming voice interrupted from across the lobby. Tell the poor girl to leave before security escorts her out. Maya turned to see a man in his early 40s approaching, his custom suit immaculate, his smile predatory. Everything about him screamed wealth and self-importance. His Rolex caught the light as he extended his hand, not to Maya, but to adjust his already perfect tie. Richard Ashford, he announced, as if the name itself should command reverence. Executive Vice President. And you are? Maya Chen. I'm here to see Gerald Pemberton. Yes, I heard. Richard's smile widened, but his eyes remained cold. You know, we get people coming in here all the time with wild claims. Lost relatives, illegitimate children, forgotten business partners. He chuckled, and the receptionist joined in dutifully. The problem is, Ashford Industries was built by my great-grandfather, grown by my grandfather, and is currently being transitioned to me by my father, who unfortunately is in declining health. There's no room in that lineage for outsiders. I didn't claim to be family, Maya said evenly, though her heart was pounding. I simply received a letter. A letter anyone could forge. Richard circled her slowly, like a shark assessing prey. Tell me, Miss Chen, what exactly were you hoping to gain here? A job you're not qualified for. A charitable donation. Perhaps you thought you could intimidate an old man's legal team into giving you money. Heat rose in Maya's cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. I was hoping for answers. Here's your answer, leave now, and I won't have you arrested for trespassing. Richard pulled out his phone. Security. We have a situation in the main lobby. Mr. Ashford, that won't be necessary. Everyone turned. An elderly man in his 70s, thin and distinguished with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, stood by the elevator bank. Despite his age, he carried himself with quiet authority. Gerald. Richard's tone shifted instantly to false warmth. I was just handling this little situation. She claims to have an appointment with you, of all things. Gerald Pemberton's eyes found Maya's, and something flickered in them, recognition, perhaps, or vindication. Miss Chen. Thank you for coming. Please, follow me. Gerald, surely you're not, Mr. Ashford, the lawyer said, his voice suddenly sharp as a blade, you are not yet CEO of this company. And even when that transition occurs, you will not dictate who I meet with or when. Miss Chen has legitimate business here. Now, if you'll excuse us. He gestured toward the elevator. Maya walked forward, acutely aware of every eye in the lobby following her. Richard's face had turned an alarming shade of red. I want to know what this is about, Gerald. My father would want me informed of any company business. Your father, Gerald said as the elevator doors began to close, is precisely why Miss Chen is here. The top floor was even more intimidating than the lobby. Gerald led Maya through corridors lined with portraits of stern-looking men, the Ashford legacy, she presumed, until they reached a conference room with a view that stretched across the Seattle skyline to Puget Sound beyond. Please sit. Gerald took a seat across from her, pulling a thick folder from his briefcase. I imagine you're very confused. That's putting it mildly. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. How much did your mother tell you about your father? Maya's stomach dropped. My father died when I was 2. Car accident. My mother raised me alone. She passed away last year. Her voice caught on the last word. It was still raw. I'm very sorry for your loss. Gerald's sympathy seemed genuine. Your mother, Dr. Sarah Chen, was a brilliant woman. Biochemical engineer, if I recall correctly. How did you know that? Because 24 years ago, she worked here. At Ashford Industries, in our Pharmaceutical Research Division. He opened the folder, sliding a photograph across the table. It showed a young Asian woman in a lab coat, smiling at the camera. Maya's breath caught. She'd seen this photo before, in her mother's things, but her mother had never explained where it was taken. She worked here for 2 years, Gerald continued. And during that time, she had a relationship with someone. Someone who cared for her very deeply, but who was trapped in an impossible situation. Let me guess, Maya said bitterly. He was married. He was Thomas Ashford. The current CEO. Richard's father. The room seemed to tilt. Maya gripped the edge of the table. You're saying Thomas Ashford is my father? I'm saying he believes he is. And he has, for 23 years, made certain financial arrangements to ensure your well-being. The quarterly deposits into the trust fund that paid for your education, those came from him. Maya's mind reeled. She'd always assumed the trust fund had been set up by her mother's family, though her grandparents had died before she was born. Why are you telling me this now? Gerald's expression grew somber. Because Thomas is dying. Pancreatic cancer. He has perhaps 6 weeks left. And before he goes, he wants to make things right. He wants to acknowledge you publicly and name you as a beneficiary in his will. A beneficiary, Maya repeated numbly. More than that. Gerald pulled out another document. Thomas never wanted to run Ashford Industries. It was his father's dream, his father's company. Thomas was always more interested in the science, the research. It's why he supported Sarah's work so passionately. But family obligation demanded he take over as CEO when his father died. Now, however, he has a choice about succession. He has a son. Richard. Richard is problematic. Brilliant at business, yes. But ruthless. Under his leadership, Thomas fears the company will abandon its commitment to ethical pharmaceutical research in favor of pure profit. The research division that employed your mother. Richard wants to shut it down entirely and focus on acquisitions. Gerald slid a final document across the table. Maya's eyes widened as she read the header, proposed changes to corporate succession and board composition. Thomas wants to name you as co-CEO alongside Richard, with equal voting power. Additionally, he wants to give you his shares, 42% of the company, which would make you the largest single shareholder. Maya laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. That's insane. I'm a graduate student studying environmental policy. I know nothing about running a pharmaceutical company. You know about ethics. About research. About the human cost of corporate decisions. That's what Thomas values. And he's arranged for mentorship, for training, for no. Maya stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is. I can't. I came here expecting maybe some answers about my father. Not this. Maya, why didn't he ever contact me? My mother struggled. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment until I was 12. She worked 2 jobs sometimes. If he cared so much, where was he? Gerald's face was pained. He was a coward. He admits that freely. He was afraid of scandal, afraid of his father's judgment, afraid of destroying his marriage to Richard's mother. He let fear keep him from knowing his daughter. It's his greatest regret. Well, it's too late now. Maya grabbed her backpack. Tell Mr. Ashford thank you for the trust fund, but I'm not interested in playing happy family or corporate games. I have a life. A real life. If you walk away, Richard becomes sole heir. Do you understand what that means? It means the company goes to the person who actually grew up as an Ashford. Which is how it should be. It means hundreds of researchers lose their jobs. It means drug prices will be maximized for profit rather than accessibility. It means it's not my responsibility. Maya's voice rose. I didn't ask for any of this. I don't want it. She was at the door when Gerald spoke again, quietly. Your mother never told you about Thomas, did she? Maya paused, her hand on the door handle. I knew Sarah. Briefly, but I knew her. Do you know why she never told you? Because she didn't want you to feel burdened by something you couldn't control. She wanted you to be free to make your own choices, to live your own life. Thomas respected that. He stayed away because Sarah asked him to, even though it killed him. But now he's dying, and he's asking you to make a choice. Not for him. For the hundreds of people whose lives this company touches. For the patients who need affordable medication. For the researchers who are trying to cure diseases rather than just profit from them. Gerald set a business card on the table. You don't have to decide today. But Thomas would like to meet you. Just once. Just to tell you himself what he couldn't tell you all these years. He's at his home in Medina. The address is on the back of the card. Maya didn't take the card. She walked out, letting the door close behind her, She made it to the ground floor before the tears started. Maya pushed through the lobby. Mercifully, Richard was nowhere in sight, and out into the cool Seattle afternoon. She walked without direction, her mind churning. Her father was alive. Her father was a millionaire. Her father had ignored her existence for 23 years. Her father was dying. Maya found herself in a small park overlooking the water. She sat on a bench and pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos of her mother. Dr. Sarah Chen, who'd worked 70-hour weeks to give Maya every opportunity. Who'd helped with homework at midnight and driven her to soccer practice and never, ever complained about doing it alone, except she hadn't been entirely alone, had she? There'd been money. The trust fund. Medical bills always mysteriously covered. That summer program in Washington, D.C. that changed Maya's life. Who had paid for it? Thomas Ashford had been there in his way. Just not in any way that mattered to a child who'd wanted a father. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from her roommate. Job interview went great. Celebrating tonight, her life. Her real life. She was halfway through her master's degree. She had plans to work for an environmental nonprofit, to actually make a difference in climate policy. She had friends, a boyfriend, a tiny apartment she loved. She didn't want to be a CEO. She didn't want to wear power suits and make decisions about drug pricing and quarterly earnings, but her mother had been a scientist. A researcher. Someone who'd dedicated her life to finding cures, to helping people. How many researchers would lose their jobs if Richard took over alone? Maya pulled up her browser and searched for Richard Ashford. The first article that appeared was from 2 months ago. Ashford VP proposes restructuring plan, efficiency over sentimentality. She read it, then another, then another. A picture emerged of a man who viewed the company purely as an asset to be maximized. Who'd already begun cutting research budgets in favor of marketing spend. Who'd pushed out senior scientists and replaced them with yes men. Who'd looked at Maya in that lobby like she was trash to be disposed of. Maya thought about all the corporate scandals she'd studied in her environmental policy classes. The companies that put profit over people, that destroyed communities and ecosystems, because no one with power was willing to stand up and say enough. She thought about her mother, working late into the night, because the research mattered more than sleep. She thought about dying of cancer, knowing you'd spent your life as a coward. Maya stood up. She didn't have Gerald's business card, but she remembered the company name. She could find the address. The Ashford estate in Medina was obscene, a sprawling waterfront property that probably housed fewer people than the square footage warranted. Maya stood at the gate for 5 minutes before pressing the intercom. Yes? A woman's crisp voice. My name is Maya Chen. Gerald Pemberton told me. I'm here to see Thomas Ashford. A pause. 1 moment. The gate swung open. A woman in her 50s, dressed in what Maya guessed was a nurse's uniform, met her at the door. Miss Chen. Mr. Ashford has been hoping you'd come. Please, follow me. The interior was museum-like in its perfection and its coldness. No photos on the walls, no personal touches. Just expensive furniture and expensive art. Maya followed the nurse up a curved staircase and down a long hallway to a bedroom suite. Thomas Ashford sat in a chair by the window, a blanket over his lap despite the warm day. He'd been handsome once, Maya could see, but illness had hollowed him out. His skin was grey, his hands skeletal. But his eyes were sharp and bright and desperately hopeful as they fixed on her face. You came, he whispered. Maya didn't know what to say. I shouldn't have. But you did. He gestured to a chair across from him. Please. Maya sat, keeping her backpack in her lap like a shield. They studied each other in silence. You have her eyes, Thomas said finally. Your mother's eyes. She had the most brilliant mind I'd ever encountered. And the kindest heart. Then why did you let her raise me alone? He flinched but didn't look away. Cowardice. Pure cowardice. I told myself I was protecting my marriage, my family, my father's legacy. But the truth is, I was protecting myself from difficulty. From uncomfortable truths. From having to be brave. His voice cracked. I've spent 23 years regretting that choice. 23 years knowing I had a daughter in the world I was too weak to acknowledge. The money was nothing. Money is easy. It requires no courage, no vulnerability. Anyone can write a check. He leaned forward slightly. Maya, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. But I am asking you to consider my proposal. Not for me. For the company. For what it could be. I'm not qualified. Richard isn't qualified either, not in the ways that matter. He knows business, yes. But he doesn't understand the purpose behind the business. Ashford Industries was founded to develop treatments for diseases that other companies ignored because they weren't profitable enough. We've created medications for rare conditions, for pediatric cancers, for illnesses that affect the poorest populations. Richard sees all of that as wasteful. As soon as I'm gone, he'll gut the research division. So stop him. Keep control until you find someone actually qualified. I'm dying, Maya. I have weeks, maybe a month if I'm lucky. There isn't time. His hands trembled on the armrests. I know this is unfair. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But hundreds of scientists, thousands of patients, their futures hang in the balance. And you're the only one who can shift that balance. By accepting half a company I know nothing about. By providing a check on pure greed. By asking the questions Richard won't ask. Who does this help? Who does this hurt? Are we in this business to heal people, or just to enrich shareholders? Thomas's voice strengthened. Gerald tells me you're studying environmental policy. That you want to work in advocacy. Well, this is advocacy. This is standing up to power and demanding better. Maya stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Below, manicured lawns stretched toward the water. A gardener trimmed hedges with mechanical precision. Everything perfect. Everything controlled. If I say yes, she said without turning around, Richard will fight me every step of the way. He'll make my life hell. He already thinks I'm some kind of con artist. Yes, he will. And yes, he does. I could fail spectacularly. Destroy everything you built. You could. But I don't think you will. Why? Maya turned to face him. You don't know me. You've never known me. I know you came here even though you didn't want to. I know you could have walked away this afternoon and never looked back. I know your mother raised someone with integrity. That's enough. Maya closed her eyes. She thought of her thesis advisor, Professor Williams, who taught her that policy work meant getting your hands dirty. That changing systems meant entering systems, no matter how corrupt they seemed. She thought of her mother, who'd believed that science should serve humanity, not the other way around. She thought of Richard in that lobby, so certain of his superiority, so ready to crush anyone in his path. If I do this, Maya said slowly, I do it my way. I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. I'm not changing who I am to fit into your corporate world. Thomas's face broke into the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. I wouldn't want you to. And I want Gerald on my side. Someone I can trust. Done. And I want to meet the research team. Before I make any final decisions, I want to understand what they're working on. Of course. Maya took a deep breath. Then, tentatively, yes. I'll try. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I might be terrible at this. You'll be brilliant. He reached out a trembling hand. After a moment's hesitation, Maya took it. His grip was weak, but warm. I'm so proud of you, Maya. I know I have no right to be, but I am. She couldn't speak past the lump in her throat, so she just nodded. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Gerald brought stacks of documents to Maya's apartment, corporate bylaws, financial reports, research summaries. Maya's boyfriend thought she'd lost her mind. Her roommate was convinced this was all some elaborate scam, but Maya read everything. She met with scientists who were working on treatments for childhood leukemia, for Alzheimer's, for diseases she'd never heard of. She saw their passion, their dedication, their fear that their projects would be cancelled if profit became the only metric. She also met with the business team. Most were professional, if skeptical. Some were openly hostile, clearly loyal to Richard, and Richard himself. He'd launched a campaign to discredit her before she'd even officially been named co-CEO. Anonymous sources told business reporters that Thomas Ashford had lost his mental faculties, that he was being manipulated by a gold digger, that the whole situation was a disaster waiting to happen. Maya learned to ignore it. Mostly. 3 weeks after that first meeting, Thomas died. The funeral was massive, politicians, celebrities, business leaders. Maya sat in the back, not family, not quite outsider. Richard delivered a moving eulogy about his father's vision and legacy, never once glancing in her direction. The will reading was brutal. Richard's face went from confident to shocked to absolutely furious as the lawyer read the terms. Co-CEOs, equal voting power, 42% of shares to Maya. This is absurd. Richard exploded. She's a student. She has no experience. My father was clearly not in his right mind, Mr. Ashford, the lawyer interrupted. Your father had multiple physicians evaluate his mental competency specifically to prevent such challenges. The will is ironclad. Richard's eyes turned to Maya, pure venom. You think you've won. You think you can just waltz in and take what my family built. I think, Maya said carefully, that I'm going to try to do what your father asked. Honor his vision. His vision died with him. This company needs to evolve, to maximize efficiency. And I will not let some outsider with bleeding heart ideals destroy shareholder value. Then I guess we're going to have some interesting board meetings. The first 6 months were warfare. Richard blocked Maya's proposals, cut research budgets behind her back, and generally made every decision a battle. The business press had a field day. Ashford Industries in turmoil, rival heirs clash over company direction, but Maya learned quickly. She formed alliances with board members who cared about legacy over short-term profits. She brought patients to board meetings, real people whose lives had been saved by Ashford drugs, to remind everyone what the company's purpose was supposed to be, and slowly, grudgingly, she earned respect. Not from Richard, never from Richard, but from others. From the scientists whose budgets she protected. From the mid-level managers, who appreciated that someone was finally asking about workplace conditions. From the sales team who saw that ethical practices could actually be good for long-term brand value. The turning point came 8 months in, when one of the research teams had a major breakthrough in treating a rare pediatric cancer. It would take years to bring to market, and the patient population was tiny, maybe 500 children worldwide. We're not pursuing it, Richard announced in a board meeting. The economics don't work. 500 children, Maya said quietly. 500 children whose treatment we cannot profit from. We have shareholders to consider. We have 500 children to consider. Children who will die without this treatment. That's emotional manipulation, not business strategy. Maya looked around the table at the board members. My mother was a scientist. She worked here, in our research division, because she believed that some things matter more than profit. That saving lives, even a small number of lives, is worthwhile. Thomas Ashford believed that too. It's why he founded this company. So I'm proposing we pursue this treatment, even if it loses money, because it's the right thing to do. Because that's who we're supposed to be. The vote was close. But Maya won. Richard stormed out of the meeting. But 3 board members approached Maya afterward and told her she was doing exactly what the company needed. 2 years later, Maya stood in the same research lab where her mother had once worked. The team had just successfully completed phase 2 trials for the pediatric cancer treatment. It would be another year before it was available, but the results were promising, an 80% remission rate. Your mother would be proud, Gerald said beside her. He'd become her mentor, her advisor, her friend. I hope so. Maya watched through the glass as scientists celebrated, hugging and laughing. Some days I still can't believe this is my life. Any regrets? Maya thought about it. Her life had changed completely. She'd had to drop out of her master's program. Her relationship had ended. Her boyfriend couldn't handle dating someone constantly in the news. She worked 70-hour weeks and dealt with Richard's obstructionism, and constantly questioned whether she was making the right decisions, but she'd also protected dozens of research programs. She'd ensured that medication pricing remained ethical. She'd met children who were alive because of treatments Ashford Industries developed, treatments that might not exist if Richard had had his way. No, she said finally. No regrets. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard, board meeting moved up. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. We need to discuss Q3 projections, Maya smiled. Another battle. There would always be another battle, but that's what Thomas had asked her to do. To stand in the gap. To be the voice asking uncomfortable questions. To remember that companies were made of people, and people mattered. She'd wanted to work in advocacy, to change systems from within. Well. Mission accomplished. As Maya left the lab, she passed a framed photo on the wall. A group shot of the research division from 24 years ago. Her mother stood in the front row, young and smiling, her eyes bright with possibility. I'm doing my best, Mom, Maya whispered, and somewhere, she thought, both Thomas and Sarah were proud.